Yeah, so, I don't know, it's all
All right, cool. So let's see here. I guess you guys can't see what I'm typing, but we actually have this pretty cool, yeah, this is so weird. This cool Etherpad thing, if you go to the RailsSchool website and log in, or just go to the class, if you RSVP for the class, you get a link to, say, show whiteboard. And this is actually how you can join if you aren't at Noisebridge. I post a link to a Google Hangout on there and stuff like that. It has to do with the content type of the file. So anyway, I'm typing an agenda. So we'll start with about RailsSchool. We'll do introductions, and then we'll talk about the learning agenda, and we might. Yeah. Sound good? Cool. I'll start. I'm Brad. I know Anthony. You guys are new. I am one of about 4 teachers of RailsSchool. RailsSchool started about 2 years ago by this guy named Gabe, who's a professional Ruby developer, moved to the Bay. And the point of RailsSchool is to have just kind of a sustainable place to learn about Ruby on Rails. We don't have a curriculum. We might develop one. We're actually you guys, and also Noisebridge hosts us, which is really cool. We don't have a space in the East Bay. We might do an East Bay one if we have space. So y'all should think about chipping in a few bucks to Noisebridge. They had to do all this work recently to renovate the space, and of course it's free, so it's super cool. So that's me. I'm Brad. I am a self-taught Ruby on Rails developer. I'm kind of in my first professional job right now. I built two major apps. One for a nonprofit to do credit card processing, and one's a business app for an accounting firm. That is cool. You know, I definitely feel comfortable at a certain level with Rails and the framework, but you know, I have a lot to learn. And some of the things I do might be a little bit different than a lot of established procedures. Some not. That's about me. So and one thing I'd like to hear from you guys is this is about views, and RailsSchool is pretty chill, so I can modify the agenda based on particular things you're interested in learning or addressing. I know, and some of you guys have some Rails experience, so maybe we can modify the agenda a little bit. So, go for it, Alex.
Just introducing yourself.
Yeah. And then maybe your Ruby knowledge, and then about views, what you were hoping to learn, or something you request for a discussion.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex. Just graduated from the boot camp. That's most of my Rails knowledge from that. So I guess you could call me like an advanced beginner. And to refresh my memory on Rails stuff, we really people think of it as a Rails school, we really only spent like 4 days on it. I've been doing mostly JavaScript since then, so to get some refresher stuff. That's about it. As far as what view open to whatever. It's possible I will have to leave suddenly, but hopefully not if I do.
No offense taken. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
I'm Donnie. I'm just visiting, just checking out the class. I'm currently taking the front-end class here and just working on projects with a friend, and I'm also a beginner as well.
I am Lawrence. This is my first time here for the Ruby. I did the Arduino classroom last month, and then I did Block.io earlier this year. It's an online Rails course with Mentor, and I've also come to refresh my knowledge about this because it's been a while and I haven't touched it.
Great. And what level of Rails knowledge would you say? Have you built something?
Yeah, we had to make a personal project.
Okay.
Class, so I've done a couple of those on my own.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Sweet. Now, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Your name?
Lawrence.
Lawrence. Cool. I'm guessing you're fine. Damn, that's awesome. Great. Cool. Ken, I was telling these guys, do you live in the city? Like you do? We are contemplating doing a series of RailsSchool lessons this fall that are focused on building a project with a lot of homework and stuff like that. So you build on your own. Probably do in the East Bay, but FYI, might be interested in that. So. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think we all think that this is true with anything. Just kind of doing it yourself is pretty. It's a hard thing to kind of jump into, especially with Rails, and it's one reason we do that. There's a lot going on. It's pretty easy to get frustrated when you're learning on, the one of those like early, really hard problems that just take hours and hours to figure out. But that's how you learn. So, and doing it in a structured way, hopefully, we can kind of prevent some of the really awful.
Taking a bunch of classes separate from MySQL, just Ruby separately, but when it comes to bringing it all together, that's a little different. In those classes, you're only focused on one feature once you turn in. That's it. It's really nice. I always thought it'd be nice to just get on a project.
Cool. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. That's good to know. So, cool. So that is the deal. So, what I thought we'd do today is just kind of build a simple app and talk a little bit about views and see where we get into. There's a bunch of advanced topics. Doing these topical things, I found that there's a list of sort of advanced things, and there's way too many to get into, so it's kind of like to take the temperature of the group and see what we want to look at. I think everyone's did everyone know, when I say views, everyone know what I'm talking about? That's great, awesome. Anthony, I think you do, right? Yeah, cool. Alan, views. Cool, well that takes care of a lot of stuff right there. Let me get up my agenda. 1 second. So the first thing I could talk a little bit about is, do you guys know like how views actually work in Ruby? Like how when you do to like some record / create, like how that HTML file actually gets like picked and rendered? You dug into that a little bit. There's some pretty cool stuff going on under the hood. The first thing that's going on when the controller so when you have an HTTP request, it gets routed to a controller, right? Controller does some stuff, processes some code, and then the controller is going to hand it off to the view, a sort of standard model view controller type of thing, right? But how does the controller know what view to hand it off to, and how does the view know how to build everything around itself? The first kind of step in this is the template, and when you start a new Rails project, you have this default template. And that kind of gets applied universally to the controllers. But so any action, no matter what, like user new, some record / index, it's going to have that same kind of template applied to it, right? You can think of it as the the layout, the nav, the header and the nav and the footer and that kind of stuff. And then within that, it's going to plug in the specific view for the action. But you should know one thing I was going to mention is that let's say you want to have a different template for different types of things, right? Say not have a header or a nav bar for some actions. You can actually specify templates in the controller, which is really cool, and those get overridden. So you have an application level template, right? And it might have a nav bar, a footer, and maybe a contact us form or a big image or whatever. But let's say when you go to the brochure pages or something like that of your app, your About Us section, you want to take the nav bar away. For example, all you do is you would go in the, you would actually define a new template just for that controller action, override it. And I think, let me look this up actually. I can't remember where you put the file, but
by the way, your Google Plus thing isn't showing.
Thank you. Oh yeah, can you hear? I know. I just had it on audio.
Oh, okay.
But let's see if it can. I'll turn it on the screen here, on my camera here. Oops. Share. Let's see. Cool. You should be able to see it here in a second.
The RailsSchool website?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, do you guys know how to get? So, you guys know how to get to the site? Yeah.
You're wearing the same shirt.
Yeah. I like this shirt a lot. That is for sure. Thank you.
There we go. I'm getting something.
Cool. Can you see some code in the window maybe?
Yeah, I refreshed.
Cool. Cool. So, does anyone who's looking, can you see? You should see. Should see some code in the Hangout here. I was going to talk about how you have two different layouts, and this is a good example. This is a little app that I made, and I wanted most of the app. 90% of the app is going to let the users do some stuff, right? So I have a menu with all these drop downs related to functionality. But I wanted parts of the application, like the login page and the About Us page, to not have that stuff, right? Because I wanted that viewable to the world. There's a couple ways you can do it, but one is I just simply made a new template. So normally in your view file, you'd have a layouts folder, and inside that layouts, you'd have an application.html ERB file that defines the overall layout for your app. But if you want to define sub template, sub layouts, all you do is you put them in the same folder, but you just give them the name of the controller they should apply to. And I know there's a bit of a lag on the Google Hangout, but hopefully you can see what's going on here, where I have a static pages controller, and this static pages template is going to be applied to all the views rendered by that controller, and it's going to take out my header, whereas all the other ones are going to use this layout instead. So this is a cool trick. Does that make sense? I don't know if explaining this without showing you the files is helpful at all.
Is it kind of like a CSS file where you said override?
Yeah, you can kind of think of it that way. Yeah, there's a bit of a cascade, right? And it's the basic thing is what Rails is doing is it's saying, okay, I need to render. After the controller hands it off to the view, there's a render function that's called. We can go into that. There's some cool stuff about that. But by default, it just kind of happens magically. You can think of handing it off. Rails is going to go, okay, cool. What template should I? What layout should I use? They call them. I think of it as a template for this. Like, what's the overall shell? And the first thing it's going to look for is it's going to look up in some sort of cascading order of precedence, right? And the first one I don't really know, but what I do know is that a file with the same name as the controller is seen as having higher precedence than the application.html.erb, which is kind of the final terminus. If you don't have one of those, you're not going to get anything, right? Or you're just going to get you're not going to have any shell. It's just going to render the view. Does that make sense? Can you see the code here that it in the Google Hangout? I don't know if you guys are looking. And then what it's going to do is it's eventually going to get down to this yield tag. And yield is then going to hand off the rendering to what I really think of as the view. It's funny, before I taught this, I Googled like what the actual canonical terms for this stuff is, and it's a little bit loose. But there's basically kind of, and I might be wrong, as far as I can tell, it's a little bit loose. But there's two kind of levels. There's the template, right, which is sort of the overall parts of the page, and then there's the view, which is the actual stuff that's required to render the data, right? So you can think of it as, you have a page and a header and a footer and maybe a table, right? The template is going to be the header and the footer, and the view is going to be the table. It's going to be all the TRs and the TDs that go into actually making the thing. And yield is where Rails hands it off to that next kind of Russian doll nested level of the view. Make sense? Hopefully the plug will be coming soon. So
can you show your controller?
I can show my controller.
The one that directs to the static page.
Absolutely. It does nothing. Oh, haha. It's funny, I have a keyword in there too, which is interesting. I'm pretty sure I'm actually overriding myself there. So you can see at the top there's a layout keyword, and you can actually put this in your controller to override the default. So I actually think I'm telling but because I have this layout keyword up at the top of this, I'm actually telling it, I'm just overriding myself there, which is sort of weird. So sort of in development. I think this is the way I want to go, but I don't want to delete the file. So you might have, an application that, let's say you're designing it, and you realize, there's really two types of pages I'm going to have. Pages that do this and pages that do that, right? But they're going to look really differently. You could handle that pretty elegantly by simply having two templates, like page A and page B. And at the top of, let's say half of your controllers were using page A, you just say layout page A at the top of those. And the other ones, you go and say layout page B. And then you'd have two nicely separated things. And you could, maybe share view code among them or maybe not. So. I haven't really messed with a whole lot. One of the things about Rails is, like fast iterative development. And so I haven't really been in a context where I've known ahead of time exactly how everything's going to look. So, cool. So,
Go
ahead.
I don't know what kind of question this is. When you make a new app using a generator like Rails, new app, whatever, where does that default page come from?
Good question. Oh god, and it changed with the recent version of Rails. It's some sort of weird config thing. But what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to overwrite it. You're not supposed to change it. You're supposed to overwrite. They add a controller. And that's exactly what's going on with my static pages controller. In my routes, I say my route is static pages home. I have a home method in my controller, and that's going to be passed off to the home show or the home .html in my static pages view folder. Does that make sense?
Hangouts, by the way.
Oh man.
For me, anyway.
Yeah.
These Hangouts seem to be touchy. Whoa.
It's probably the internet connection.
That's me talking there. Sorry. Yeah, it might be the internet. Everything seems. I'm not really sure what to do. It says live, and I have a little red thing.